so what are we doing here? We're doing the pizza dough thick, but this is what we're gonna do. This is our enriched dough, so it's just like lean dough, but this one has more sugar and fats in it, so it's better for sticky buns, pizza dough, thick Sicilian, stuff that's gonna rise a little bit bigger. So even though it's the thick Sicilian dough, we're gonna use it for our sticky buns for tomorrow. You can use it for cinnamon rolls, any kind of sweet donuts, stuff like that. So here's our recipe. To zoom in on that, there's nothing to do with it. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a yeast fermentation. So this is a fermentation science, just like the same way they make beer, wine. They turn those into vinegars. This is a dough fermentation, just like similar to how sourdough is made, but we're using this yeast, which is Fleischmann's. Whereas sourdough, we'd use the ambient yeast to inoculate it, but also help make it rise. So we're gonna add our yeast first. So what do we have here? 3 tablespoons of yeast. Did you actually measure it out yet?
There's a teaspoon or a tablespoon.
3 tablespoons of yeast. Hobie's gonna grab that. So short, I need to get you a selfie stick to record it. A little louder.
Is that better?
That's fine, I'm just messing with you. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to rehydrate the yeast with our warm liquids. So our liquids are supposed to be at what temperature? 100, because yeast actually dies at 110 degrees. So in the oven, as the bread is being baked or whatever product it is, the yeast will eventually die, okay? So we're going to add warm water and some kind of carbohydrate, which is going to be the lactose that's in here, and also the sugar, and that yeast is going to eat the sugar or carbohydrate and produce 2 things, CO2 and alcohol. This yeast doesn't produce much alcohol. It's not bred for that reason. This one's bred to produce a lot of CO2, which is going to give that rising effect in the bread. Do you ever cut a loaf of bread and there's holes in the inside? Okay, that sponge-like thing, that is yeast, or that is CO2 that's been created, and then the protein in the dough holds its shape. You ever see the holes that are in Swiss cheese? It's also a bacterial fermentation with CO2. So those are CO2 pockets, the same way bread is made. Okay, so we got our yeast. Let's add our warm liquids. So 100 degrees. If you use colder liquid than that, it would just rise slower. Because we're going to bake this today, we want to use 100-degree water. Yeah. So we're using half water, half milk. If we were going to make like Hawaiian rolls, you would cut the water out and use pineapple juice instead. So you can use whatever. If you wanted to make, if you had like leftover French onion soup and you want to make like French onion rolls, you could just use the soup as your liquid. It's pretty neat. We're going to give it the whiskey business. So we're rehydrating the yeast right now. The warm liquid's waking it up. This is called blooming. Like a flower.
Wow.
Flower with a W, not with the O-U. Okay. After that, we're going to add our sugar. This is also going to help the yeast grow. And we're also going to add salt. The salt's going to do is going to add flavor to the bread. Or whatever product you're making, it's going to add flavor to it. It's actually going to bring out the flavors in it, but it's going to do that, but it's also going to slow the growth of the yeast so that there's not random big pockets all over the place. The reason we whisk it is to get a full emulsified liquid here. So now we'll also add our melted butter. Did we melt butter? So add your melted butter. Our eggs. Anything else? Yep, so we're going to add the oil in a little bit. So while this is blooming, what we're going to do is we're going to measure out the flour. So this is a triple balance beam scale, not a digital scale. Back in my day, we didn't have digital scales, because I'm old, you know.
Oh my god, shut up. You're like, what, 30?
31. Okay, so anyway, the way this works is it balances each other out. So if I needed 2 pounds of a product, I would put 2 pounds here. You grab me 2 blocks of butter. And in theory, these should balance each other out. Okay, so that's how a balance beam scale works. But what we need is 6.5 pounds of flour, but I can't put flour on here, right? It'll just fall all over the place. So we need a vessel. So this is the most common vessel we use. And when you purchase this from the store, they give you a counterweight so that they balance each other out. Hopefully. Okay? But if you were doing more than 6.5 pounds of flour, you can use 2 similar containers, one on each side of the scale, so they balance each other out. So when we're doing like the bigger recipes and scaling out and stuff, That's what we do. So what we need is 6.5 pounds. So we get 6.5 pounds. We have 6 pounds of weight here. If you look here, this is the front scale here. So how many ounces are in a pound? 16. There we go. And what's half of 16? There we go. So 6.5 pounds. 6 pounds, 8 ounces. Perfect. Okay. So now we got to pick which flour we're going to use. So when we're doing a dough, as far as bread dough, what kind of flour do we want? Something with high gluten or low gluten? High gluten. Why do we want high gluten in bread flour? Close. Why do we want more protein? More gluten. That's right. So the more gluten formation that happens, the more structure the bread will have, and as the yeast produces CO2, it'll rise and hold shape. And that's what we're going for, right? If we use a lower gluten flour, so this is high gluten, which is pizza flour. This is all-purpose, which is like middle of the road for both, and then pastry flour, if we have any left, that is for like cakes and sponge cakes and stuff that will be light and fluffy. Okay, so we're gonna do pizza flour. This one's just called pizza flour, but there's high gluten flour. There's all different kind of names to it. We're just going to get the goals, get a balance. Can you give it the whiskey business again? Whiskey business. There you go. So we're getting close. So what I do is I just give it a little weight to see how close I am. Notice how much flour I spilled on the ground so far. How much did I spill?
None.
That's right, none. Okay, that's your goal. Not to spill any flour on the ground. Because one, it's a wasted product, but two, it's also dangerous. People can slip on that. Plus it's a mess. Okay. Beautiful. Alright, so let's bring the bowl over. Probably do with that. We got this all mixed up. You guys can smell the yeast. Well, got the mask on, but you'll be able to smell the yeast development. Kind of smells a little skunky, a little cheesy. That's what we're going for. And what we're going to do is we're going to add the flour. Be careful when you add it, you don't just dump it in real fast, or else it's going to poof up in your face. Okay. I'll try the dough. Now we're going to add it to our mixer. Hook this one on here. We'll put the hook right in. Put it right in there. Slide it over. Lock it in place. Hobie's gonna set it up for us.
Hobie.
Alright, so this mixture has a couple different safety mechanisms. If you guys want to get closer, take a look. So he's gonna close the cage because it has a magnet that needs to make a connection. Okay. Should be all the way in. There you go. He's gonna pull the next safety mechanism up, so it's got to be up, and then make sure you have it at stir, which is the lowest setting before you turn it on, or else, like I said, if you turn it on full blast, it'll pop that flour out of there, and it's hard to fix it because then your ratios are off. Okay, are we at stir? To get that started. Once it incorporates a little bit, this mixer you can turn on the fly, so we're going to turn it to 1, and we're going to set this to 8 minutes. 0. Are we at 8? Cool. After 8 minutes, we're going to add our oil and continue to mix it. Okay, so after 8 minutes, once it's been mixing there, we're going to add our oil, mix it for 2 more minutes, and then we're going to take it down and we're going to shape it into the size balls that we need. Let it do a primary fermentation in the fruit box, and then once we take it out of there, we're going to roll them out, make sticky buns, and the secondary fermentation is going to happen tomorrow. Okay, so we're going to make the sticky buns, make the whole procedure as if we're going to put it in the oven. We're going to put it in the freezer. Tomorrow morning, we're going to take it out at 8 o'clock, put it in the proof box. By 9 o'clock, it should thaw and proof, and then put it in the oven. Okay?
Yay.
Any questions? Come on, no questions? So what is this process called? Starts with a K, but sounds like an N. Kneading, yeah, like a vacation. And then during this process, what's happening is that flour is being hydrated and stretched, and what's being formed? Gluten, that's right. Gluten is in 4 different products, and the acronym is BROW. You know what an acronym is, like USA? BROW, barley, rye, oats, and wheat. It's actually not in oats. It's just the oats are processed in a place that processes those other ingredients, so they say it has.
Why are you touching me?
Don't touch each other. COVID. Oh, you can turn that off. We're good.
Okay.